There is a pattern in history that has reshaped entire civilizations long before they even realized it was happening. A pattern that begins quietly, invisibly, inside laboratories, military bases, and universities. A pattern that starts as a tool of power and ends as the backbone of empires. In the 1500s, Spain used silver to control global trade. In the 1800s, Britain used steam and telegraphs to control global communication. In the 1900s, America used nuclear force to dominate the world order. But in 1969, something new was born, something that would transform every government, every currency, every corporation, and every human being on Earth. It was not a nation, not an army, not a currency. It was a network, a web, a digital organism that began with 4 computers and today spans 5.4 billion people. This is the story of the internet. How it rose from military secrecy, how it consumed the global economy, and how, in 2025, it is entering the most dangerous stage of its evolution, the stage where it begins to think. Like every empire, the internet followed a predictable pattern, a pattern of birth, expansion, commercialization, consolidation, and finally autonomy. 5 stages, 5 transformations, each one reshaping the world faster than the last. Today, we are entering stage 5, the era where the internet is no longer a tool we use, but a system that uses us. An era defined by one force, AI. But to understand how we got here, we must rewind to where it all began. 1969, the United States, and a project so secret it wasn't even supposed to exist. Stage 1, birth of a digital empire. 1969, 1989. ARPANET, the military origins. It began during the Cold War, a moment when America feared one thing above all else: a nuclear strike that could eliminate the nation's entire communication system. The Pentagon needed a network that could survive atomic war, a network with no central point, a network that could reroute itself like a living organism. Their solution was ARPANET, created by the U.S. Department of Defense. On October 29, 1969, 2 computers, one at UCLA, one at Stanford, sent the first message in internet history. It was supposed to be the word login. It crashed after 2 letters. The message simply read, "Low." But those 2 letters were the spark of a global revolution. Through the 1970s and 80s, ARPANET grew quietly behind the scenes. Universities connected, research labs connected. Scientists began sending files across the country instantly. A new protocol emerged. TCP, IP, the foundation of every online interaction today. By 1983, ARPANET officially switched to TCP/IP. This was the moment the modern internet was born, and like every empire, once it is born, it begins to expand. Stage 2, expansion, 1989, 1999, the World Wide Web, a new frontier. In 1989, at CERN in Switzerland, a British scientist named Tim Berners-Lee created something that ARPANET never had, a way for ordinary people to use it. This was the World Wide Web. Websites, hyperlinks, browsers. The idea that information didn't just move, it could be explored. In 1993, Mosaic became the first user-friendly web browser. In 1994, Netscape arrived, and the internet exploded. This was the Great Migration, the digital equivalent of the American westward expansion. Every year, millions of new users poured online. Companies raced to register domain names. Governments scrambled to understand the new power they had unleashed. By 1999, the number of websites had gone from fewer than 100 to over 3 million. The internet was no longer a military project. It was no longer an academic tool. It was becoming something else, a global marketplace. And like every empire entering its golden age, money began to reshape everything. Stage 3. Commercialization, 1999, 2008. The dot-com boom, the new digital economy. When money enters a new frontier, it brings ambition, speculation, and eventually collapse. Investors poured billions into internet startups with no profits, no products, and often no business models. In 1999, a single domain name could sell for millions. Companies added .com to their name, and their stock price doubled overnight. It was a mania. The same mania that had struck empires before. Spain with silver, Britain with railroads, America with housing, and like every mania, it ended the same way. In March 2000, the dot-com bubble burst. $5 trillion in wealth evaporated. Thousands of companies disappeared, but something unexpected survived the collapse. The giants. The companies that would define the next 20 years. Google, Amazon, eBay, PayPal. The internet wasn't dying. It was consolidating, just as every empire does after its first major crisis. Stage 4. Consolidation 2008-2020. The big tech era platforms take control. After the 2008 financial crisis, a new kind of empire rose, not a nation, but a handful of companies. Facebook, Apple, Google, Amazon. Together, they did something no government in history had accomplished. They centralized global information. 2 billion people joined Facebook. The iPhone put the internet in every pocket. Google processed 3.5 billion searches per day. Amazon became the backbone of global retail. The internet was no longer a network of websites. It was a network of platforms, centralized, powerful, self-reinforcing. And in this new era, users were no longer customers. They were the product. Their data became the new commodity. Their attention became the new currency. Their behavior became predictable and profitable. And like all imperial phases, it couldn't last. Stage 5. Autonomy, 2020-2025. The rise of AI. The internet begins to think. The final stage began quietly. With algorithms, recommendations, machine learning tools buried deep inside the platforms. But by 2020, the pattern was unmistakable. The internet was no longer just storing information, it was interpreting it. AI systems began writing news, generating images, driving cars, predicting human behavior with terrifying accuracy. Then came ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and other AI models trained on the entire internet. For the first time in history, the internet wasn't just a repository of human knowledge. It could use that knowledge. It could analyze, synthesize, create, manipulate, decide. And now, in 2025, we are entering a world where the internet is becoming fully autonomous, not a tool held by governments, not a network controlled by companies, but a living digital system steering global communication, economies, elections, and culture. It took 56 years to reach this point, and the consequences are only beginning. The consequences, 2025, the collapse of the old world order. Whenever a new empire rises, an old one dies. The internet's rise has already begun dismantling the old structures. Print media collapsed. Retail collapsed. Broadcast television collapsed. Physical banking collapsed. Traditional advertising collapsed. Privacy collapsed. Every industry built before 1990 is now being rebuilt or erased by the internet's final evolutionary stage. And AI will accelerate that collapse. Tasks once done by millions of workers can now be done instantly. Professions that took decades to master can be replicated in seconds. Institutions that shaped society for centuries are losing their relevance. The internet is not replacing industries. It is replacing the need for them. This is the speed of collapse. This is the power of exponential evolution. This is Stage 5. We began with 4 computers. We now operate billions of machines connected through a digital nervous system, a system that is beginning to make decisions without us. For 56 years, humanity controlled the internet. But in 2025, the balance is shifting. The internet is no longer a tool, no longer a network, no longer a marketplace. It is becoming an entity, a force, a global intelligence. And the question is no longer how the internet evolved, but what it is evolving into next. If you want to understand the empires of the future, you must understand the networks that rule them. This was the full rewind. Subscribe if you want the next chapter.